Hey guys, what's up? It's Ripe again. In today's video, my entitled neighbor dumps trash on my property and then decides to burn it near my house. She claims to have permission from the owner. The only issue is that I am the owner of the land. Here is what happened. Let's dive right into the story. The title story starts like this. I love telling this story because in addition to having an entitled Karen that I get to destroy, I also get to do one of my favorite things. That being basically the dramatic spin and be like, Karen, I am the owner. Most of the time people know who their neighbors are, so for Karen to not know might seem odd at first. The thing is that I inherited this property, and while I didn't want to move into it, I also didn't want to just sell it. I decided I would fix it up a bit and then rent it out to make some extra money on the side. I would come out to the property about once a week when I had days off work to come and fix things up. I did not hire anybody since my dad was a contractor and taught me everything he knew. I was gonna fix it myself and didn't care about all the extra time it would take me. Me showing up randomly in messy work clothing, it was really easy to mistake me for a handyman rather than the actual owner of the property. I was half expecting somebody to not know that my great aunt died and left me the house. Potentially even having the issue of somebody thinking I was breaking in, but that fortunately didn't happen. My imagination just likes running wild with these things because I read way too many stories on Reddit. Anyway, I started noticing that every week when I arrived there would be a burned pile of trash sitting on my property. I had no idea where this was coming from, and I didn't want to just start going around and accusing people. I was gonna call the town and let them know that I owned the property and kept finding the charred remains of trash in my yard. Laws are different everywhere, but where I live there is an increased chance of fires getting out of control and spreading. On top of burning trash being illegal where I am, starting an uncontained outdoor fire is also highly illegal. That call to the town didn't end up happening because the next week while I was inside working, I smelled smoke and saw fire coming from the side of my yard. I sprinted outside and saw the woman I knew to be a Karen that lived next door. My great aunt always complained about her, so I knew the type of person I was dealing with already. She had poured a bunch of trash on the ground and set fire to it. Then started dumping more on top of that, causing the fire to grow in size. I could not believe what she was doing and ran right up to her face. I have no issue being confrontational when the person deserves it. Me? What the hell do you think you're doing? Karen, minding my own business like nobody clearly taught you. Me? Well, I was taught not to dump trash on other people's property or light fires there. Karen, I know the owner of the house. She said I could dump my trash here and set it on fire to dispose of it. I could call her right now and tell her that her hired help is not doing his job. I see that you barely come out here anyway and want to take advantage of an old lady, huh? She even told me that you seem to be slacking, so I could get you fired if I wanted to. Me, you do realize that even if you had permission dumping like this, it would still be illegal because of the fire and the fumes. More importantly, I know for a damn fact that the owner did not give you permission to dump on the land. I also know for a fact that you have not spoken to an old lady about the work I'm doing on this house. Karen, excuse me? The woman who owns this house is my good friend and we talk every single day. Me, then you would have known that my great aunt actually died 4 months ago and left the house to me. Tell me again how you talked to her about my renovations that didn't start until after she died. Are you able to talk to the dead, or do you just naturally look like you belong in a graveyard? She was so pissed from my comments that she spat at me and then went back into her house. I had to take a hose and put out the fire in fear of it spreading. A ton of grass was already destroyed from her various trash piles and I was pissed at her. I wanted to call the cops on her for the dumping, but my issue was that I didn't have proof. With the renovations, it really could look like I was doing it and then just blaming a random person, which I knew Karen would claim. Instead, I came up with a much more evil plan that I was pretty proud of. The first step was to install cameras on the property to catch Karen in the act of dumping. I knew she was not gonna do it after getting caught, at least right away. I didn't want to risk her waiting until after I rented the house, so I deployed part 2 of my plan. This involved me being a little piece of work and a liar. I called Karen on the phone and acted like I was sorry for the way I treated her. That my great aunt talked well of her all the time. I then told her that I overreacted and she was free to dump on my property whenever she wanted. Keep in mind, I was clear to say dump and not add the word burn or set fire to anywhere in my statement. This is important in a little bit. It only took 3 days for her to get caught on tape dumping the trash on my property and setting it on fire. I am nowhere near the property, but with my new cameras I am able to see the entire thing and call the police about it. I tell them I see from my security camera that somebody had started a fire on my property. I keep watching on the cameras and see in minutes how police and fire trucks show up on the scene, with Karen standing there like a sitting duck. She has no way out of this and gets arrested for setting the illegal fire. In court she tried to use for a defense that I gave her permission to do these things. That is where my wording from before came in handy. I told the court that I did in fact call her up and give her permission to dump trash on my land. That I was not selling it yet and I wanted to show that I was a good neighbor. When asked if I told her that she could burn it, I was honest and said that I never told her to do those things. If I did, then she would still be in trouble for setting the illegal fires, but I could get in trouble for being an accomplice. I technically just gave permission to dump, which had nothing illegal about it. She got sent to prison because, again, fires are a huge deal where I live. We see on the news a lot of people starting a backyard fire and it's spreading and destroying neighborhoods or going into nearby woods. Nobody is getting a slap on the wrist for a crime like that around here. That's the point I'm trying to make. It was hard to hide my smile until I was alone after court and enjoying my nice revenge. She learned that I was not only the owner, but messing with me was a bad idea. I still need to get the land cleared off and redo the grass in a few areas, but things did not end up too bad for me. It was honestly the most fun I had since I got the property, but I wouldn't want anything else to happen. And yeah, Ripe Stars, I have to say, even though I am happy that Karen ended up going to prison, this could have gone wrong very easily. Who knows, maybe the judge or the police could have been on Karen's side, or maybe the fire would have spread and OP's property would have been destroyed. Definitely a risky revenge that paid off in the end though. If you enjoyed the video so far, please don't forget to subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and maybe even like the video because that would help me tremendously. Thank you so much. The next one is another revenge story. My first job after college was as the accountant for a motel with one of the city's best restaurants on the property. For reference, this was LBCP, long before cell phones. The property owners were a family who preferred to leave the daily running of the business to the staff. Each week we had a staff meeting led by the head chef, who was a male, and the lead host, female. After I worked there for about a year, they hired a new catering manager and she and I quickly became friends. When workload permitted, we would get together and talk, but our work didn't suffer because of our friendship. Then one day at a staff meeting, the paper copy of the agenda was handed to us and, per my usual, I didn't read it. Instead, I just listened to and participated in the meeting. I noticed other meeting participants glancing at me with odd expressions on their faces, but I didn't question it. When I returned to my office, the front desk manager walked in with me and asked, "What do you think of the last agenda item?" She had a wickedly amused expression on her face. I shook my head and then looked at the agenda. The last line said, "Accountant and catering manager should spend less time talking to each other." The head chef did not discuss this in the meeting, but the damage was done. All the hotel's managers had seen it in writing, and many shared it with their employees. I was furious. The catering manager and I discussed it and decided to ignore the whole thing, while also ignoring the head chef as much as possible. But there was a lit firecracker in play. The head chef and the lead host were both married to their respective spouses and were having a hot affair on the property. All the staff knew about this. There were security videos of the chef and the host going into empty hotel rooms during the day and coming out an hour later. Staff told stories of catching the two of them in the dry goods storage room and seeing them in the backseat of their cars. A few weeks later, we were informed that the family who owned the business had sold it to another company and the handover would occur in 1 month. None of us were sure of our jobs, but my job was more on the line than anyone else's. It made perfect sense for the incoming owners to put their own accountants in place, so I updated my resume, leaving the ending date blank. A month later, the new company came in and had their 2 accounting staff follow me around to see how things were done. I knew it was just a matter of time before I was let go. 3 weeks later, I was asked to come to the manager's office, where I found the new company management team and the personnel manager. This was pre-human resources. They were kind and gave me an excellent reference letter and a month's severance pay. Then they asked me, "Are there any concerns you have with the way the business is running? And please be as candid as possible. We will not reveal that it was you who shared the information." Time for that lit firecracker to explode. I explained how I was worried about the repercussions that were a distinct possibility due to the extramarital affair between 2 upper management people. There was complete silence. All the staff knows about it. We have seen the videos of them entering hotel rooms together and coming out much later. And the staff report seeing them in the act in the storage room. Shocked stares. I would not say anything about this if neither was married. But they both have spouses and children, and I can imagine the blowback if one or both spouses find out about this. Blowback that would most likely occur on hotel property. They had me name the people involved, including the affair havers and the staff who had the proof and details of the occurrences. Then they thanked me, handed me my termination paperwork, took my keys and badge, and I was gone. The fallout, as told to me by my friend, the catering manager, the lead host was laid off within days of my leaving, and the head chef was put on 1-year probation, sent to classes for, I would guess, appropriate behavior in the workplace, and he was not allowed to lead any more staff meetings. You know, I just felt lucky that I never needed to go into that nasty dry storage room. The next one is titled, "Company Saves Money and Then Gets Screwed." About 6 years ago, I worked for a power supply company in the UK. I worked in a small team that coordinated all the major company's infrastructure projects, and the role required traveling to meetings all over the country. We would average around 800 miles a week in company miles over the year, depending on time of year and location of projects, etc. Someone in the finance department had reviewed our expense claims and calculated that over 1 quarter, we'd not covered the required number of company miles to meet the company's policy on company cars. For that 1 quarter, without looking at any other data, we lost our company car entitlement, and the company told us that we had to return the fleet company at the end of their leases. Malicious compliance activated. As we were project engineers, we had a very particular set of skills for knowing how to follow rules to the letter and how to do so in a manner that benefited the company or project or individuals. Usually, if it benefited the company, it benefited all involved parties. This was not one of those occasions, though. We pay benefits in kind tax on our company cars in the UK. The rules around this change as when the government feels like it. My team had all carefully chosen our cars to be zero cost to ourselves by choosing cars that were below the allowance of £300 per month, so the remaining allowance covered the tax obligation. We would all be screwed by the benefit in kind tax charges that year, and we're now paying tax. So, for starters, we reviewed the company car policy and found the company had no way of stopping us handing our cars back with immediate effect, whilst the company was still responsible for the leases. So, we made all arrangements for personal cars and handed our keys over at the next team meeting. We had also reviewed the company travel policy. We started using hire cars and trains for traveling. Trains and hire cars in the UK are not cheap, as none of us were willing to use our personal cars and claim the 50p per mile. Usually we would work a long day and book a bit of overtime or Leo to drive to and from meetings without staying over, as we would prefer to be at home even if it meant getting home late. That stopped with immediate effect. We would only work the mandated 7.5-hour day and then stop, book into a hotel and take full advantage of the £25 food and drink allowance for dinner. Then work from home the following day, as we had been away from home the previous day as per the policy. After about 8 weeks, we were called into a meeting with our line manager and debt manager about our expenses. Our expenses for the first month after the cars had been returned were more than they were for the previous 12 months combined. Our line manager agreed that our expenses were in line with the policy, otherwise he would not have signed them off. Then the department manager told us that we were getting company cars back and he expected the expenses to return to previous levels. We declined the offer of company cars and let management know we would be adhering to the travel policy to the letter. And yeah, ripe stars, if your company puts up stupid policies, then I guess a good way to get revenge on them is to engage in some kind of malicious compliance. Because honestly, in my opinion, revenge and malicious compliance stories are pretty closely related if you ask me. Anyway, I forgot to mention, if you enjoyed the story so far, please don't forget to post some star emojis in the comments, because that would really help me in regards to the algorithm. Anyway, the next one is a story from r/amIthejerk, and it is titled, I built a fence to keep out trespassing neighbors. Earlier this year, I, 26 female, got an inheritance from a family member, and it was a godsend. I finally got to move out and get my own place after living paycheck to paycheck. My dream place. I could never get a place like this without Providence or cutting my way through the corporate ladder with a machete. But the most important part is the pool. I love it. I would swim every day if the weather let me. It has helped me get in great shape. The problem comes from the neighbors. Mark, fake name, and Kaylee, faker name but it's something like that, have 3 kids. Brad, 16 male, Chad, 14 male, and Leah, 11 female. They started out friendly enough, especially Kaylee, who's dripping with housewife yoga PTA energy. She told me about a week after I moved in over a plate of cookies that the prior owners of the house were an older couple who let her kids use the pool whenever they wanted because their kids were out of the house and they didn't like quiet. I, on the other hand, love quiet. I'm also introverted, I love my privacy. First thing I did when I moved in was put up curtains. I told her I was uncomfortable with that arrangement, but perhaps they could come over occasionally if they don't abuse the privilege. Cue the children abusing the privilege all summer. Every time I was out swimming, it would not be long before Chad and Brad would run over and jump in, followed by Leah with her floaties. And being teenage boys, they would always want to roughhouse or gape at me or my friends when we would get out of the pool and make gross comments. This would be tolerable if it happened once a week. They even brought friends a couple of times, and more than a couple of times I've had to tell them they need to leave because I was with adults doing adult things, aka drinking, etc. So anyway, I'm now putting up a fence for 2 reasons. Number 1, I'm getting a dog. Number 2, I want my privacy. Kaylee ran out of their house when she saw me and a couple of friends hammering in the fence and digging holes for privacy hatches. I made sure everything was within regulation and right on the property line. She said if I put up a fence it would be harder for her kids to come over and play. I said yep. She asked me if I was planning on putting a gate between our yards as well. I said nope. Finally she asked, a little choked up, if I was depriving her kids of our pool. Our pool? I told her how in the beginning I had said they could use the pool as long as they didn't abuse the privilege, and they did. I said now they can only come over if invited. She told me they were gonna be crushed and saw me as a big sister. I told her no teenage boy looks at their sister the way those boys looked at me and my friends. She took huge offense to that, and it might have been gross to hear, but so were the comments on my bikini from her boys. It's just too much. I'm not their babysitter and I have every right to my privacy, but some people have been saying the fence is too much and I'm gonna hurt the kids' feelings. So Reddit, am I the a-hole? And yeah, ripe stars, I would 100% say that OP is not the a-hole here, because the neighbor has no right to trespass on OP's property or swim in her pool whenever they want. Also, putting up a fence to prevent people from coming onto your property without permission is definitely not an a-hole move. Anyway, let me know in the comments what you think about this. A comment on Reddit said, not the a-hole, not at all. In fact, however high you were planning on building this fence, make it a foot higher. Comment number 2, not the a-hole, build it higher for that extra privacy. I would also install cameras in case those kids try to come over without permission. And yeah guys, that's certainly a good idea. Security cameras never hurt, and I don't think that you would regret having them. And to be honest, in a lot of these fence-related disputes between neighbors, one thing that many people don't even think about is when someone comes onto your property, especially kids or whatever, and they injure themselves, you might be liable for whatever happens to them. And obviously, no one would want that. And with this, we have reached the end of the video. However, if you cannot get enough of my content, please check out my endless playlist, where you can find thousands of hours of content. In addition, please don't forget to subscribe to my channel to not miss any of my daily uploads. Thank you so much in advance, and I hope to see you again tomorrow.